Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, August 28th, 2025. Time to get going one more time. And, well, there's no avoiding what I guess is the top news story of the day. So we'll have to acknowledge it. We are, of course, the day ends in a Y. So we are, of course, technically always the case, under the cloud of a mass shooting. But we're under the cloud of the kind of mass shooting that reaches headlines and makes everybody aware of the fact that it happened. School shooting, in fact, in Minneapolis. And one of the most amazing things about this one, and I'm speaking, of course, of the one that took place at a Catholic elementary level school. And I have to point that out because it was also pointed out to me that, hey, you all missed it, but on Tuesday, there was a mass shooting at a Catholic school in Minneapolis also, except it was at a high school. And I don't know how it is that stuff doesn't make it to national headlines. I suppose it's the craziness of the times. I mean, there's a very narrow band and very specific sort of attack that makes it to the headlines. I mean, this involved a school, but a high school. But it happens at high schools all the time, and we get the headlines. It was outside the high school. Well, how far outside the school? On the sidewalk outside the high school with students waiting to enter the high school. Well, normally it would have all the hallmarks of something that would make the headlines, but it has a weird aspect to it in that it was, I guess, something like, I guess maybe more akin to a drive-by, and that is the suspect apparently drove up, jumped out, fired, and left. And police, I guess, believe that one of the kids that was shot was actually targeted. And I guess we only, register it when it's random and therefore more fearsome somehow. And so, of course, that makes the headlines, and of course, that'll drive the day. That's just sort of where we are in America today. There's news about it. The story is developing. The alleged shooter has all of the lurid details that people, I guess, I don't know, demand of things like this. I don't think we're going to spend a great deal of time on it, only to acknowledge that it happened. Because, well, this happens quite a lot. And it's difficult to even say it's the top news story of the day because of the nature of the news that we're getting from all over the country, and that Donald Trump continues to create. So there are many, many other things going on, and many, many other things that demand our attention. And Greg Dworkin is here to share them. And I don't know if you feel like it's much of a fanfare day or not, but we could do the low key, your favorite imperial fanfare, just to let everybody know that you're here and acknowledging what's going on in the news, and that you've compiled much more to divert our attention, I suppose. Good morning, Greg.
Hey, good morning. There's always room for imperial margarine.
Yes, it's easy enough and low key enough to do the job, and light as well, and delicious and nutritious. Is it?
I feel like we actually should cover a little bit of that shooting.
Certainly,
but I have to acknowledge to our listening audience, it not only greatly disturbs me at any possible level you could think of, but it's way too reminiscent of what happened in Newtown. And so I get a pit in my stomach feeling whenever we talk about it. And especially when we talk about the disturbed individual who it took place with. Why don't we just do that and just get it out of the way with?
It's fine to do it that way. Yes.
This is from CNN. Police examine online videos, writings possibly linked to Minneapolis church shooting. Suspect, church/school.
Right.
And yes, there were children involved, and they were younger.
No word on how many doors, by the way, this time. The Republicans
well,
shying
we went
away
through the
from
window.
Yeah, well, we got to have none of those as well. Everyone needs to be sealed in a
Churches can't have stained glass windows anymore. They have to be completely sealed in stone because, the alternative is to do something.
Right.
And we don't want to do something. So this CNN story says in the videos, which were you alluded to.
Yeah.
Two of which were titled with her full name. This is a trans woman, and that
Oh,
has
believe
nothing
me,
to
they'll
do
be
with anything. It's just an
that'll be there.
acknowledgement that I'm going to get the descriptive
You need to have that on the
things
record because
wrong.
that's what Republicans are going to spend their day harping on. That's
Right. Her
the
name
issue,
is
not the
Robin
guns.
Westman. She's an adult in her 20s, and so children and trans have nothing whatsoever to do with the story. But a handwritten notebook and videos display a shooting target with an image of Jesus and a collection of guns, magazines and ammunition.
Sounds pretty
They
American right
clips,
there.
so I guess we can still talk about it.
Right.
Various messages and racial and religious slurs were written on the weapons, everything from psycho killer, suck on this, uh, heavy references to Nazis and killing Jews.
Sure.
6 million weren't enough, that sort of thing. Another magazine had the message, kill Donald Trump. And
what do you
this
know?
individual was seen going over each of the 20 or 30 or so magazines, just fondling them. It was just really, really disturbing.
Yeah.
And now,
Might
interestingly
otherwise have run for
enough,
governor of Texas.
yeah, in a voiceover, speaking of Texas, in a voiceover of one video, the person filming also claimed to have met and support Brandon Herrera, a pro-gun YouTuber who lost a Republican primary for Texas Congress seat last year. Herrera condemned the attack in a social media message posted Wednesday, saying the shooter would burn in hell. And then another of the gun magazines shown in the video lists the names of 6 notorious mass shooters, including Adam Lanza, who the suspect wrote they had a deep fascination for. That would be the Sandy Hook killer, whose name we normally don't mention. And others, Robert Bowers at Pittsburgh Synagogue, crazy, crazy stuff, partly using English words in Cyrillic script with Russian words.
No, nothing weird about that.
And entries in his diary describe the author becoming morbidly obsessed at a young age with the Newtown shooter and other past school shooters. And
Any
then I'm so
obsession is
sorry
morbid.
is written in large letters. I think it's possible, I don't know this, but I thought I read somewhere that he might even have attended that school at one point. That would not be surprising if that, in fact, were the case. But, this is just awful, awful stuff. I just think that the idea that a pro-gun Republican felt the need to denounce it is of interest.
Yes.
Because that's the kind of thing that breaks through even to them.
I guess so. Right. Well, your name's on this. Yeah. You might have to.
Well, you could ignore it. You could say that has nothing to do with me. But
true.
no, he did a full denouncement.
Well, it was. I don't know. I also understood from early discussion of what was going on in the dissemination of the videos and what was etched on the guns, that this was also somebody who was very deeply immersed in online 4chan type
celebration of murderers.
Right. And so that the point really was you can't take any of what's on there necessarily at face value. For some of these guys, this stuff is like very deeply ironic and sarcastic, and they do it because they know it provokes a reaction more than that might, more than anything else. But clearly, just to know all the names offhand and to think to do something like that, there's clearly, it's not wrong to say morbid fascination with XYZ, but also, very deeply interested in disturbing others, and they know that that's the most provocative stuff they can possibly do.
Yeah, well, as the kids say, he's done the research.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, that's what we're facing, and I am sure that in the next day or in the next few hours, Republicans will be turning this into, this is an issue about this person's gender rather than anything else. And I don't know, if you guys lose track, it was actually the murders.
Right. As the mayor of Minneapolis said, enough of the thoughts and prayers. We actually have to do something. So this is from the New York Post. Second Amendment activist Brandon Herrera, named in Minnesota mass shooters, disturbing video speaks out. The context in which he was named is also interesting because the Minneapolis shooter claims to have met and talked with Herrera at a gun convention, which is called the SHOT Show. SHOT is Shooting, Hunting, and Outdoor Trade Show. It's
Hey, that's
described by the
funny.
Post as a popular
SHOT.
firearms expo held
Yeah.
annually in Las Vegas. And the video says, yeah, I met Brandon Herrera at a SHOT show last year, and he and I had a conversation, brief conversation. We agreed on a lot of things, so y'all should vote for Brandon Herrera for president.
But
She said in the video. And again,
okay.
apologies for tongue-tied on gender.
Yeah.
The SHOT Show is sponsored by the National Shooting Sports Foundation, NSSF,
Yes.
which is
Not the
based
NRA.
in Newtown, Connecticut.
Right. Yeah. One of the more weird, radical.
Right. And that's because Samuel
Groups.
Colt and a whole bunch of other gun, inventors actually were from Connecticut, and there was a very big gun industry here for quite a while.
Yeah. Then they made submarines after that.
Yeah, submarines and guns. So don't mess with Connecticut.
I
But
guess not. Yeah. Where's that bumper sticker?
a spokesperson for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which owns and operates the expo, confirmed the murderer's name is not among any of the attendees at SHOT Show in 2024 or any year prior, according to a statement. So it's not, and Herrera noted he is also coordinating with friends in law enforcement to figure out how his online community could support those impacted by this senseless act. Again, this is more than just I'm ignoring it.
Yeah.
So I think that's of interest. But
I wanted
again,
to give you a wide berth. That's all.
the National Shooting Sports Foundation is not necessarily an incredibly radical organization. What people have to understand is the NRA is a bunch of nutcases. And then there are organizations which are even to the right of them.
Yes.
NSSF is not like that. This is a suit and tie, how do we make money, mainstream as far as mainstream goes. You want to talk about gun safety? They're happy to speak with you. They're happy to send somebody to your school to teach people about being safe and leave it at that without recruiting. I mean, they're very, very, they're what the NRA used to be.
I see. Except in khakis and blue blazers because of Connecticut.
Yeah. So it's very difficult to be like radically mad at them unless you want to be, because they don't do anything in your face and they actually are willing to work with you. They'll work with Chris Murphy. They'll work with anybody who has a safety, legislation or anything else, Connecticut, local, national, really interesting organization in that regard.
Yeah.
And the fact that they came out right away and said, we don't have a record of him, means they probably don't have a record of him. Now, he could have just shown up without registering.
Sure. I mean, I don't know what the registration records really tell us about anything. It's perfectly reasonable to
not a member. That's what they're saying. Not a member.
Okay, so bought a ticket at the door, or maybe didn't, and met the guy outside and said hello, and the guy's like, "Yeah, hi." So that's it.
Now, please understand, this is in no way, shape, or form an endorsement of NSSF or what they do. I'm just saying, you have to have a good picture of what they are.
Okay, because there are fringy groups that are
there are very
radical.
fringy groups. They just happen not to be
one of those. All right, although I thought they were a little odd on. I think there was that little episode of weirdness on Tannerite. Which I don't know whether.
Well, they're committed to what they do.
I guess so, but I mean, I don't know what Tannerite does for the outdoorsman, but okay. I don't know. Maybe, and that may be, I may be misremembering that as well. And there are certainly other groups that have been more outspoken on the need, the desperate need for people to make things blow up when they shoot them. And I'm not certain. I don't know if there's any otherwise honest outdoor application of Tannerite.
Anyway, I guess in my head, what I'm doing is associating them with the organizations, professional organizations of liquor makers and owners.
Yeah.
We sell stuff that gets you drunk, but we want to do it safely and responsibly.
Yeah. Get into a padded cell and drink alone and don't talk to anybody.
Don't drive, Yeah. And so we're happy to assist with any don't drive sort of things.
Sure. Get in an automatic driving car that will smash into the wall for you.
Right. And again, there's a whole culture in the United States of Second Amendment support.
Yes.
From people who are not nutcases, who are actually hunters. And then there's like everybody else. And so why do you need a AK-47 or an AR or any of these other uh, weapons of mass destruction that are really suitable to armies. That's a whole different discussion. But, it's out there.
Yes.
So anyway, that's all I have to say about that topic.
That will do, I think. We can move on to others.
Well, let's talk about something which is a little bit unusual. This one,
Another one.
Is covering Talking Points Memo. TPM covers this and says the standoff the Supreme Court left the door open for is here.
Oh, which one of 25 is that?
Exactly. Well, President Trump, and I like the way they phrase this. I just am really disturbed about whenever Trump does something, broadcast news, mainstream media always reports it as, okay, it's a done deal, when often the case,
yes.
in fact, it's not. President
Paperwork.
Trump purported to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook on Sunday, an unprecedented, unsurprising move in his quest to stock the once independent bank with cronies who will lower interest rates. Cook, at likely great personal expense, both financial and reputational, is fighting back with her attorney, Abby Lowell, vowing to file a lawsuit to challenge her removal. Bill Pulte, who is the bad guy in this, MAGA keyboard warrior turned director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, has apparently been using this position to scan mortgage documents of Trump's enemies for any whiff of impropriety, then turning them over to the Justice Department for a full-on criminal probe. Cook is just the latest victim, but includes Adam Schiff and Letitia James, New York Attorney General. The case challenging the first ever presidential firing of a Fed governor will almost certainly make it to the Supreme Court, where the extremity of conservatives' mission to drive the independent agency into extinction will be tested. The right-wing majority has been largely gleeful to co-sign Trump's rampage through the federal government. The thing I like about this is that this happens to be a totally objective write-in.
Right. That's true.
The weakening of executive, it's just truth is a liberal bias. The weakening of an executive branch agency being a special hobby horse for Chief Justice John Roberts in particular, as they blessed his firings of board members once thought to be protected from at-will firing, they inserted a caveat. And this is the caveat, quote, finally, respondents Gwynne Wilcox and Kathy Harris contend that arguments in this case necessarily implicate the constitutionality of for-cause removal protections from members of the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors or other members of the Federal Open Market Committee, said the unsigned majority opinion, with 3 liberals dissenting. So somebody wrote it from the 6. We disagree. The Federal Reserve is a uniquely structured quasi-private entity that follows in the distinct historical tradition of the first and second banks in the United States.
Okay.
So in other words, you can't fire Federal Reserve's Board of Governor people for reasons which are unspecified. Go ahead and test us. And then when you do, we'll say, okay, you can.
Yeah, well, the point is they wanted to buy time and escape. I'm not really even certain. There wasn't a Fed governor's dismissal at issue in that case. I'm not clear on why they decided to single that one out, unless it was somebody said settle the markets.
They are political animals, and they knew it was coming.
Well, if they knew it was coming, I would have jumped out of the way and said, yeah, you can fire everybody. But somebody must have told them, your investment portfolio, Mr. Chief Justice. So don't say Fed. Carve out for the Fed, or else your investment portfolio collapses. And if they come for the Fed later on, move your position into foreign gold holdings, and then let them kill the Fed too. So
they came for USAID, and I'd said nothing.
Yeah,
because I didn't work for USAID, et cetera, et cetera. The conservatives may run into some other minor obstacles. Georgetown law professor Marty Letterman pointed to a 1903 ruling that suggests that notice and hearing may be a requirement for a president's for-cause removal, but the case law is predictably thin in untested realm of presidential power. The reason it's thin is because presidents generally don't do this.
Yeah, it's against the law generally with Fed chairs. It's quite explicit, and the Supreme Court recognized it just the other day, essentially in their case. But whatever, and that's why people don't do it. I hate breaking the law and making constitutional crises. Not this. Well, guy.
Also, Kate Raga, who's writing for TPM, writes and adds at the very end: for this president, the choice between a stable economy and a possible near-term political game is not a close one.
Right. Clearly the case.
So, for-cause firing is a thing, and Trump is pushing it as much as possible. And to me, Well, I'm not a finance guy, although I think it's highly important that this is happening. What is very much of importance to me is what's happening at CDC.
Aha. Okay.
And what happened yesterday is U.S. CDC chief, as Reuters said, fired after weeks in role. What they should said,
Hmm.
purportedly fired after weeks in
Right.
role.
I agree.
Challenges ouster as four top officials resign. And I want to talk about that.
Okay. I love
CDC
purporting.
Director Susan Monarez challenges dismissal, citing unscientific directives by HHS Secretary Kennedy. So, in her refusal to step down, she specifically points a finger at Kennedy and says he's screwing everything up.
Mm. Well,
And a
he is.
couple of the people who resigned, four senior CDC officials resigned over vaccine policy, misinformation, and public health weaponization. They had nothing to say other than this wasn't it in regard to the recent mass shooting
Hmm.
at CDC,
Oh.
where it was shot
At
up.
CDC. Yes, not the one we were just talking about, but the one from last week.
Yeah. Resignations follow vaccine policy changes by Kennedy, so Reuters and other news organizations are clearly tying that together.
Okay.
Okay. Then there's a codicil here, I have to point out. This August 27th story has been refiled to correct a grammatical error in
Oh,
paragraph 3. For those of you who are worried and read the original, I just want you to know it's been corrected.
okay.
U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director Susan Monarez has been fired less than a month after being
Purportedly.
sworn in, and four
Yes.
senior officials have resigned among growing tensions over vaccine policy.
I mean,
They've
that
made
struck me.
sweeping
She's brand
changes to
new.
vaccine policy, including withdrawing federal recommendations for COVID shots for pregnant women and healthy children in May, firing all members of the CDC's expert vaccine advisory panel in
Oh,
June,
God.
and replacing them with handpicked Kennedy advisors, including fellow anti-vaccine activists.
Yeah. Anything
One of the
else?
officials who
Gee
quit said the
whiz.
CDC's vaccination recommendations are putting young Americans and pregnant women at risk.
Yes.
White House spokesperson Kush Desai late on Wednesday said Monarez wasn't aligned with the president's agenda of making America healthy again. In other words, she understands and probably said in private
Hmm.
to the powers that be, listen, RFK Jr. is a stupid, ignorant rat fucker, and so
Well,
we're not doing this.
goodness me.
And that's why she
I mean,
refused to resign despite informing HHS leadership her intent to do
yeah.
so.
Okay. Oh, she
So
gave.
she's also
Hmm.
represented by Abby Lowell, but also
Yeah.
Mark Zaid, and denied she had resigned or been fired, adding in a statement that as a person of integrity and devoted to science, she will not resign. Apparently, the rule is
Yeah.
that the president has to fire her. The White House can't fire her. Stephen Miller or RFK Jr. cannot fire her.
Hmm.
She has to be fired by the president.
I mean,
And it's not
he'll
clear, like
oblige.
the many examples you give. I want to see the paperwork walked
Right.
over there.
Right.
You
Right.
got to see it in writing.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's an auto pen, and we don't believe it. And I mean, it's not hard to get him to do that. He will just simply be handed a piece of paper, and you go, "Oh yeah, 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 yeah," and scribble on it, and he'll probably show
Fine.
it to everybody too. But you
But
have to
until he
do that.
does,
You have to do that,
and looking at his hand, he may bleed all over it. You never know.
right?
Monarez's attorneys accused Kennedy of targeting her for refusing to support unscientific directives.
Well, she's
CDC
there.
CDC Chief Medical Officer, remember this name, Deborah Houry, Houry, and National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Disease Director Demetre Daskalakis
Oh,
have resigned,
okay.
Houry told Reuters. Daskalakis wrote a letter to Houry. That's why I want you to remember the name. They cited a rise in health misinformation, especially on vaccines, attacks on science, the weaponization of public health, and attempts to cut the budget and influence in their resignation letters reviewed by Reuters. Also, National Center for Emerging and Zoonotic Infectious Diseases Director Dan Jernigan, whose name I recognize because I worked with him in 2007, 2008,
Oh,
when we were working on swine flu pandemic stuff.
yeah.
And again, what I can tell you about these CDC health professionals, member of the Public Health Service, so they wear uniforms, look like admirals.
Cool.
He's an extremely conservative, but very, very focused and dedicated guy. So if you have people like him resigning, it's just like even more remarkable. I mean, if you could think of, again, like the NSSF Foundation, button down, suit and tie, khaki kind of guy who resigns in protest. It's like, oh my God, you, of all people.
Well,
also stepped down days after the agency reported the first U.S. human case of screwworm, that he doesn't, linked to an ongoing outbreak in Central America. Also, Jen Layden, director of the CDC Office of Public Health Data, Surveillance and Technology, has also resigned because they're screwing with the data and they won't, report.
Nothing to do with screwworm, just
stuff.
Right. Okay. Well, this is rather remarkable. So how many are out here?
So four
top leaders,
top officials, plus
purported
the CDC director. Yeah. Now, in the moment we have before the break, I wonder if you could play this short video.
Oh, well, let's see how much of it we can get.
Or you know what? Let's do it after the break.
Oh, okay.
We can always do that.
Yeah, because it's going to interfere with.
I mentioned
such things.
That Demetre Daskalakis is the infectious disease and respiratory chief, or was until he resigned. And he wrote a remarkable letter of resignation that is published on social media. He happened to pick Twitter to do it. And I want to first play the video so you get a sense of who he is, and then read from his letter after the break.
Okay, well, we can do that, but we still need something to say for 10 seconds before I play the music. And then 30 seconds
Well, what?
After
We have
that.
10 seconds left?
Until I play the music. And then 30 seconds until we leave. It's closer to 1, I would say, now that you mention it. But okay, all right, so 4 resignations and 1 purported firing just at CDC, plus the purported firing at the Fed, plus a few others as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to call that fascist, but it is fair to call it authoritarian.
Yeah, well, certainly the case. And the idea that Trump has been holding on to is, well, I can fire people for cause. And, him, he's literally has interpreted it as, well, I just fired them cause. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Greg couldn't wait. Welcome back, Greg, to the Kagro in the Morning Show.
But, well, actually, I never left.
Right. That's why. That's what makes it so ironic.
Yes.
You were purported to have left,
but I
did not sign the paperwork. Right. This is the first time we've ever had that happen. And wow, I can't believe it. Hit the
smash that like button and remember to subscribe.
Okay, so smash.
This video that David is going to play a little bit of. Yes. It's a 3-minute video, but he'll play as much as he can stand. It's from 10 years ago.
Okay.
It comes from a series called Greeks Gone West. It's a fellow who highlights prominent Greek Americans in various and sundry professions.
Greek.
But 10 years ago, Demetre Daskalakis was director of HIV services at Manhattan's Mount Sinai Hospital, where I trained, although he was like 10 years after me, so I never met him. And he was a leader in efforts to vaccinate gay men for meningitis. So he's an infectious disease expert, vaccine expert, and I just want to play a little bit of the video because it's a direct interview of him, and you get a really good feel for who he is. And by extension, who a lot of these CDC people who you never heard of who resigned are.
Looks like a kindly fellow and in his doctor uniform and everything. stethoscope around the neck, the whole bit, around the shoulders,
Yeah, doing it in the right place.
My name is Demetre Daskalakis, and I'm a physician activist.
Greeks gone west. Okay.
I am mainly an HIV doctor, and the main work that I do is both taking care of people who live with HIV as well as working with people at high risk for HIV to prevent infection. I'm an infectious disease doctor. When I was a little kid, my parents gave me a play doctor kit. I used to be obsessed with it. So they would bring their friends over, and I would take their coats and say, you have to let me take your blood pressure and listen to your heart. And if they wouldn't, I would just give them their coat back and say, well, then leave.
By the way, that's a
Truth
nurse
is,
kit.
I always had interest in the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender community from the perspective of health. It was the community that sort of like brought me to the HIV universe. And so it all, worked out in the direction that the community that I was the most interested in also became the center of my career. I moved to Boston for 6 years. Everything was going great in Boston. And I decided that the population that I loved and that I was the most worried about in terms of HIV and prevention was here. And so I left
New York.
The ivory tower of the Harvard system and went to NYU and Bellevue. In New York, in 2012, 2013, there was an outbreak of meningitis among men who have sex with men. And there was a lot of stagnation in sort of generating a vaccine response. And with the help of New York City, the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and the Gay Men's Health Crisis in New York, or GMHC, I sort of pushed the envelope and said, we have to do this and do it big. And so we really took vaccines out to the street, to the people. And, we probably at least were a piece of stopping a deadly outbreak. It's really
we can stop it there.
Yeah, when did that become important? Taking the vaccines out to people where they live in order to prevent the spread of illness. Yeah.
And save lives. This is a meningitis vaccine, mind you, not an HIV vaccine, but that's what was killing people in New York City.
Right. All right. Good. I mean, whatever.
So that's who he is.
Go out there.
All right. That's what he stands for, and he's made it his life's career, his life's ambition, his life's obsession to helping people. This is the guy who resigned, among other people, in a letter that he published to Dr. Howry, who also resigned, maybe after reading his letter. I am writing, Dr. Howry, to formally resign from my position as director of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, effective August 28, 2025, close of business. That would be today. I'm happy to stay on for 2 weeks to provide transition if requested. This decision has not come easily, as I deeply value the work that the CDC does in safeguarding public health, and I'm proud of my contributions to that critical mission. However, after much contemplation and reflection on recent developments brought to light by Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I find that the views he and his staff have shared challenge my ability to continue in my current role at the agency and in the service of the health of the American people. Enough is enough. Now, just take that paragraph. What he's saying is RFK Jr. came and told him that I, RFK Jr., happen to be an ignorant fuckwad, and I am going to push anti-vaccine stuff on you, whether you like it or not. What are you going to do about it? That's basically what that paragraph says. So he says, while I hold immense respect for the institution and my colleagues, I believe it's imperative to align my professional responsibilities to my system of ethics and my understanding of the science of infectious disease immunology and my promise to serve the American people. This step is necessary to ensure that I can contribute effectively in a capacity that allows me to remain true to my principles. In other words, you're a lying fuckwad, and I'm not going to do what you tell me. I am unable to, because I know CDC. I know how they think, and I know how they speak, and they don't tell you this directly. They just
say that?
Think it.
Okay.
I'm unable to serve in an environment that treats CDC as a tool to generate policies and materials that do not reflect scientific reality and are designed to hurt rather than improve public health. By the way, if you're interested in getting a vaccine, let's say you're over 65 and you want the new COVID vaccine, it's now available at commercial pharmacies as of this morning. CVS has it. They didn't have it yesterday because they were waiting for CDC's recommendations, I am personally telling you that if you want a word to the wise and a pro tip, get your advice from the American Academy of Pediatrics or the American Academy of Family Physicians.
All right.
Get it directly from them. Skip CDC. You're much better off. The reason, and it pains me to say this because that was never true. It used to be the other way around. Everything used to be aligned. Not anymore. The recent change in the adult and children's immunization schedule threatened the lives of the youngest Americans and pregnant people. The data analyses that supported the decision have never been shared with CDC despite my respectful request to HHS and other leadership. In other words, I told this lying fuckwad directly to his face, I really want to see the data that he is using to claim that vaccines cause autism. I want to see the data. And he never answered me.
Yeah.
This lack of meaningful engagement was further compounded by a frequently asked question document written to support the Secretary's directive that was circulated by HHS without input from CDC subject matter experts like himself, and that cited studies that did not support the conclusions that were attributed to these authors. He never says what those conclusions are, but you get the picture.
Yeah.
Having worked in local and national public health for years, I've never experienced such radical non-transparency, nor have I seen such unskilled manipulation of data to achieve a political end rather than the good of the American people. Again, I have to remind you, these are incredibly conservative doctors who are part of the public health service, and they are officers, and they are part of a community that never speaks out like this.
Right. Professionally silent and in the background and
it's the end of their professional career. It is untenable to serve in an organization that is not afforded the opportunity to discuss decisions of scientific and public health importance released under the moniker of CDC.
Yes.
Mockery, he could have said.
Yeah.
The mockery of CDC.
That's
the lack of
concept.
communication by HHS and other CDC political leadership that culminates in social media posts announcing major policy changes without prior notice demonstrate a disregard of normal communication channels and common sense. What does he mean by that? Let me explain. 20 years ago, when I was working with them on preparing their public health website, to deal with bird flu and other flu pandemic related stuff, one of the major communications officers said to me, I really envy you that you can go on the web and just create something like Flu Wiki. When we do stuff, we have to go through 9 different committees, and it takes 6 months to get anything done.
Right.
And so we can't, by definition, be timely. We just can't. So we're glad you're doing it. We take your data and we use it. That's what they told me. So that's the normal communication channel. Having to retrofit analyses and policy, he writes, to match inadequately thought out announcements in poorly scripted videos or page-long X posts should not be how organizations responsible for the health of people should function. Some examples include the announcement of the change in COVID-19 recommendations for children and pregnant people, the firing of scientists from the American ACIP, which is the Committee on Immunization Practices, by X post, and an op-ed rather than direct communication with these valuable experts. The announcement, that's Jay Bhattacharya, the announcement of new ACIP members by X before onboarding and vetting, and the release of term of reference for an ACIP work group that ignored all feedback from career staff at CDC. We kept telling you that these guys are charlatans, and you're ignoring us. The recent term of reference for the COVID vaccine work group created by this ACIP puts people of dubious intent and more dubious scientific rigor in charge of recommending vaccine policy to a director hamstrung and sidelined by an authoritarian leader. Their desire to please a political base will result in death, disability of vulnerable children and adults. Their base should be the people they serve, not a political voting bloc. So, again, unheard of for career people to say this. I've always been first to challenge scientific and public health dogma in my career and was excited by the opportunity to do so again. Remember, he's a physician activist. He wants to help save people. That's why he was out on the street in New York administering meningitis vaccine.
Yes.
I was optimistic there'd be an opportunity to brief the secretary about key topics such as measles avian influenza, that would be bird flu, and the highly coordinated approach of the respiratory virus season. Such briefings would allow exchange of ideas and make America healthy again. We're 7 months into the new administration, and no CDC subject matter expert from my center has ever briefed the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Again, this is unheard of. I've done tabletops in the HHS Secretary's office with CDC people. This was routine. This was normal. This communication happens all the time, except not under this administration.
Yeah, well,
I am not sure
who
the Secretary is listening to, but it's quite certainly not us. Unvetted and conflicted outside organizations seem to be the source of HHS use over the gold standard science of CDC and other reputable sources. That's why the information and data person resigned. At a hearing, Secretary Kennedy said Americans should not take medical advice from him. To the contrary, an appropriately briefed and inquisitive secretary should be a source of health information for the people he serves. As it stands now, I have to agree with him. He should not be considered a source of accurate information.
Right.
Then goes on to say about the intentional eroding of trust and adds the recent shooting at CDC is not why I'm resigning. My grandfather, who I am named after, stood up to fascist forces in Greece and lost his life doing so. I'm resigning to make him and his legacy proud. I'm resigning because of the cowardice of a leader that cannot admit that HHS and his minions' words over decades created an environment where violence like this can occur. I reject his and his colleagues' thoughts and prayers, and I advise they direct those people that they have not actively harmed. Direct those to people they've not actively harmed. For a decade, I've been a trusted voice in the LGBTQ community. Again, we played his credentials for you. When it comes to critical health topics, I cite the recklessness of the administration in their efforts to erase transgender populations, cease critical domestic and international HIV programming, and terminate key research to support equity as part of my decision. Public health is not merely about the health of the individual, but it's about the health of the community, the nation, the world. This nation's health security is at risk and is in the hands of people focusing on ideological self-interest. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the CDC, my colleagues, yada, yada. Thank you again for your support. Sincerely, Demetre C. Daskalakis, MD, MPH, he, his, him. I mean, this is a guy who really strongly practices what he preaches. It's a very long resignation letter, but it hits everything you need to know about what the hell is going on there.
Well, now you know. And I think we all imagined that this was going on behind the scenes and that they were doing everything they could to avoid having to resign, because resignation means, hey, I don't know who's going to take over this stuff, and I don't know what it means, and I don't know whether you're going to get you're not going to get any health care, no warnings, no help, no vaccine, no advice, no science. But now, I mean, I can't stay here and watch that happen. I have to, if it's happening, I have to go and just tell you that it's happening. All I can tell you that I don't know, get more masks, I guess.
So Patty Murray yesterday, Senator, asked RFK Jr. to resign over this.
Sure.
There is stuff brewing on Capitol Hill because of it. The Washington Post writes the backlash to Monarez's ouster marks the latest instance of Kennedy, the founder of an anti-vaccine organization who last year called the CDC a cesspool of corruption, clashing with agency scientists since he became top health official. And then they go into mass HHS layoffs, restructuring purge ranks of CDC, the vaccine advisor quitting. That would be the guy we just read from. Also, a top CDC expert stepped down, Lakshmi Panagiotopakalopoulos.
Wow.
There's a mouthful. Who co-led a coronavirus vaccine work group of CDC staff and outside experts. Panagiotopakalopoulos wrote in an email to colleagues she worried she can no longer help the most vulnerable members of the population, very similar to our other resignation letter. Kennedy replaces members of independent vaccine committee with his own appointees. Fiona Havers, who oversaw CDC respiratory virus data and was in charge of presenting it to the ACIP, stepped down the week after the administration's removal of its members. She doesn't have confidence in it anymore. And, of course, the CDC shooting left employees angry at Kennedy and Trump.
Sure,
and so that's just from the CDC backlash. But, again, there's stuff brewing on Capitol Hill. And although Donald Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are not capable of feeling shame, senators who agreed to push RFK Jr.'s nomination, who voted to confirm him, like Bill Cassidy, ought to be totally and absolutely ashamed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they hide from it. They're just going to say, "Well, I didn't know he was going to do that." But of
he
course,
told me he wasn't going to.
Everybody
well,
said,
what are you going to do about it now? Why don't you call for his resignation?
You might as well at least do that. Geez, he's not going to resign yet. But so what's the difference? You're not going to make anybody mad. I guess you'll make Trump mad, but he's not going to resign. So, But so I got harmless. Go ahead, sign on to the call for resignation. But they probably won't even do that. I'm struck by the idea of the purported ouster of the CDC director, who was, this is not a holdover. This is somebody they appointed and approved like last month.
Confirmed by the Senate. This is a Senate confirmation.
But it was done like last month. She's only been there a matter of weeks, and so they put her in as somebody who they thought would be, I guess, compliant with their stupid agenda. And it turned out the agenda was so much more stupid than anybody imagined that even the person who agreed to take on the agenda says this is a dumb agenda, and they have to end up trying to fire her. It's amazing. Everybody's a Scaramucci.
Throw another video at you and see if you can play it.
You can throw. I'll duck. And
it's right at the very end, and I won't even tell you what it is. Let's just hear it.
I don't know. That's dangerous. Although at this point, it can't be any worse than any of the things that have been said on the show already. So I guess we're okay. Maybe I'll mark today's show as explicit. Maybe we'll get more viewers if I do that. Why is this taking so long? It's on X,
I need confirmation from Merriam-Webster that fuckwad is indeed a word.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, we're gonna have to leave that one alone because I'm thinking, well, even if we bleep it, like there's a lot of things that could be behind that bleep. We want to know exactly which one. Okay, Susan Collins. All right, is that's the video? I got the right one, don't I?
You do.
She's
and what the
Christopher
Reb wrote when he posted it is, Susan Collins should be very concerned. She showed up as the main guest at a ribbon cutting in Searsport, Maine, just south of Mount Desert Island. It backfired.
Okay.
Backfired. Yeah. The crowd was not happy to have her and yelled, "Shame, shame, shame." So let's hear it.
They were supposed
shame
to be
is what these guys need.
Applauding, I guess. Whoa, there it is.
That's Susan Collins.
Yeah.
I just want to make clear that they felt pretty strongly about it.
Yes, and they were yelling. She said something in the middle of all that. I mean, it was just a word or two, but you can't even hear it.
We should be celebrating today, and they just yelled it at it again.
Yeah, they are, and so it's shame, 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 and she's just doing her best to smile through it, and there's people behind her applauding like golf clapping. Yay, you cut the ribbon. So yeah, not the event they were hoping for, I guess. It goes on for some time, 2 minutes. Right. I don't know if it's all shame, but I don't know. Maybe I'll drop the needle a little bit. I might turn it down a little bit. It's a little bit of clapping. Here she's.
Well, maybe they were clapping at what they were doing,
or at the lectern.
They were clapping at the shame.
Maybe that was it. Yeah, and now she's beginning to try to speak, but she can tell that that's not happening. She's got a frightened smile frozen on her face, and whoever's running the event is now at the lectern with a gavel and taking the microphone, I guess, to tell everybody to shut up.
Well, if they saw the Elise Stefanik tape, they'd know that if I introduce you, I may better get ready to get up there and speak because they're not going to let you speak.
Right, and they're angry, so I brought a hammer with me. And let's see. She's trying to speak.
They're not happy with her.
No.
So disgusted with the cuts the Republican Party has made to this big ugly bill. That's what you're considering. Get out of here. So
here's Collins.
If you would let me celebrate.
Oh, please. There's no celebration to begin.
I get the idea. This was not a comfortable event and good, and she's dealt with this before, and she probably also, Collins probably has she's run hot and cold. She's done things in opposition to Republican presidents before that have gotten
but only when they had
welcomes.
the votes to sustain
yes.
it. You know, if she was the deciding vote, always for whatever the Republicans want. Always.
Yeah, so it's a great shame for Maine that they've maintained her in office for this long. But time and public sentiment may finally bring this to an end.
Right. Speaking of public sentiment,
yes.
This is also from a Talking Points memo, TPM. White House gives Indiana GOP another chance to bend the knee on redistricting. They came to the White House yesterday because Indiana still hasn't agreed to do it. We're talking about one seat. But Republicans are putting pressure everywhere to get one seat or another because, as we talked about the other day, they're just getting clobbered on the generic battle. It's up to 9. We talked about that yesterday.
Yeah.
And they're afraid of losing seats, so they want to get as many as possible, which may or may not help them. We'll see. But my point is that Indiana's non-committal about it. Maybe they'll fold in the end. That would be the expectation, but they haven't yet. Yeah,
I don't know what their hesitation is unless it's just, sometimes the state legislature has finished its session and it would require some sort of special session, and you find out from your members that they're not particularly excited about doing that in the middle of the summer, and they don't think they can get it done, and or there's Indiana, like any place else. We read in depth about what was going on in New York 21, and when you get down to that nitty gritty level, you talk to the state legislators, you usually find in order to create that one extra seat, I have to take away Republican voters from 3, 4, 5 other members of Congress who are Republican now, who are friends of mine and are former legislators, and they're saying, please don't do it, and take it from that guy, not from me. And it's very difficult to work that out. And the hard work of removing Republican voters from Republicans, longtime stalwarts of the party who presumably who knows? In Indiana, they could be just local insurance salesmen who agreed to just run the candidate in a box thing. Yeah. Sure. But the point is that those people now are said to be power players.
Who retire and then move to the villages in Florida. That's what he's supposed to say.
And please don't take it away from me. And they can't decide how to divvy it up. It's not that easy a task. And unless they're excited about doing it, they're not going to rush to it. Now, 5 seats like you might get out of Texas, that seems more exciting to the Republican legislators. 1 seat, like we're going to knock our heads against the wall for nothing here.
Yeah. So I mentioned quite a bit about the Second Amendment. We started the show with that in terms of what happened in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the First Amendment.
Oh, is it
there's more there? There's more than the second. So this is from Public Notice, Liz Dye writing.
Okay.
Trump's flag burning executive order flames out.
Okay.
Nothing about this is real law, she writes. And then goes to the history of the Supreme Court saying, you can't do this.
Yeah, it's another one of those. You just can't. And it may very well end up in the end. You're right. You can. It's not working. But Trump is not interested in the technicalities of it. He's interested in the photo.
No, he's like, I'm doing it anyway. What are you going to do about it? Sue me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that's exactly what's going to happen. And in all likelihood, it falls apart. But even the people who were backing this executive order for Trump knew that this was the case. That it's not that we are saying, no, it really is now going to be illegal to burn the flag. What we're saying is we are going to make trouble for you. It's going to be the job of the federal government to make you suffer and drag this thing out. We'll lose in the end, but we're going to ruin as much of your life as possible in 1 or 2 show trials to do it.
Because even if we lose, at least we have the satisfaction of knowing we've been vindictive and you have suffered. So that's really what we care about.
And the MAGA base says, well, it ought to be against the law. Well, yeah, it ought to be. It can't be. So, but the point is we will pretend
a comic
that we
strip
agree with
there ought to be a law.
No. Yeah. Well, and this has been something that Republicans and conservatives have been after for a long time because it ought to be against the law. It should be stigmatized and difficult and should be an act of extraordinary protest. And we've landed on that. Why not just leave it alone? Because they've run out of things to have Trump sign. So they gave
So
him
this
another
is just a minor nitpick from this
All
excellent article that Liz Dye wrote. As you know, I like when TPM, for example, says Trump's purported firing, because you don't really know.
Yeah, it's excellent.
And what Liz writes is Trump knows he can't prosecute flag burning as such. What she should write is Trump purportedly knows, because Trump doesn't know squat. It's somebody in the White House like Stephen Miller or some other.
They know.
I failed law school, but let me, now that I'm in a position of power, show you that I win, my professors lose. Trump purportedly knows, she should have written, he can't prosecute flag burning as such. Instead, he's trying to define down incitement such that burning a flag can be treated as inherently inflammatory.
Yes.
And if it's inherently inflammatory, it is therefore thus criminal.
Yes, or at least not protected.
And this comes from a 1969 Supreme Court decision, Brandenburg v. Ohio, in which KKK leader Clarence Brandenburg was prosecuted for calling for violence against Black and Jewish people. The court overturned his conviction, saying the constitutional guarantees of free speech and free press do not permit a state to forbid or prescribe advocacy of the use of force or of law violation, except where such advocacy is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action, like Trump on January 6th.
Yeah, right.
And is likely to incite or produce such action.
It was designed
So
to.
Trump wants to treat flag burning as definitionally imminent lawless action, but it's not. And then she goes through the whole history of fighting words, them's fighting words. First Amendment lawyer Ken White, Pope Hat, pointed out in a very helpful Blue Sky
Pope
thread.
hate now, says.
Chaplinsky, well, now he's whale-killing windmill hate.
Yes, it was never Pope hate. I don't know how the E got on the end, and I don't know whether it was intentional, but he's turned hat into funny. Hate. Yeah, I've noticed. Okay.
He predated a whole host of other Supreme Court rulings protecting Americans' rights to say extremely offensive things, rendering the fighting words doctrine more or less defunct. Supreme Court addressed fighting words in Texas v. Johnson. Johnson's expressive conduct, burning the flag, fall within the small class of fighting words that are likely to provoke the average person retaliation and therefore a breach of peace. No reasonable onlooker would have regarded Johnson's generalized expression of dissatisfaction with the policies of the federal government as a direct personal insult. So no, that doesn't work. So Ken White is just citing decision after decision, precedent after precedent about the president, saying you can't do this, and he's going to do it anyway, and God knows with the Supreme Court.
Right. So the thing you ought to be doing out there is going and burning Confederate flags and see if you get prosecuted for that. And I don't know. Somebody has already protested by burning a flag and gotten himself arrested, so he'll be the test case. We'll see. All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We couldn't fit it all in. We had so much to say. But, I think a good roundup in general. There are a million other things we got to get to, some of which are short outrages, some of which are long read outrages, or some of which are medium read fuel for outrages later on. I guess we ought to make mention of the fact another very widely circulated story from the Seattle Times, who lets us know that ICE, although I don't know if there was ICE, but as federal agents, either posing as ICE or, working in concert with ICE. We say now ICE is sort of the umbrella terminology for federal agents, very often dressed up in camouflage and bothering people, i.e. arresting them and shipping them out of the country or putting them in concentration camps. Who have they arrested this time? In addition to, before I even get to that, I mean, they're all over the place and bothering everybody. I happen to see also widely circulated video of first couple days of school here in D.C. in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood, very heavily Hispanic population there as well, having to mom and young child, like, I don't know, first grade, kindergarten age kid, having to push their way through a crowd of half camouflage, half casually dressed, bulletproof vest wearing and very frequently masked agents, essentially loitering outside of the entrance of the school. And I don't know what they're looking outward, and mom and child have to push their way through the crowd to get out the door to leave and go home. They didn't pester this family, but it was just kind of odd and interesting, too, that there was that sort of armed presence outside of the school with an eye toward harassing the residents and arresting the parents and possibly the kids either on their way into or out of the school at the same time that there was a mass shooting at a school in Minneapolis. And, well, there was nobody around guarding the school at that point. I know that that's usually a Republican response to school shootings. I found it rather interesting that there was that kind of presence of federal agents with AR-15s outside of the school where nothing was going on, and outside of the schools where something was going on, the only AR-15s in sight were shooting through the stained glass windows of the kids in the pews. I thought that was of interest. Now, out to the Seattle Times, where they were giving us the latest example of the abuse of power by ICE and other federal forces. Federal agents arrest firefighters working on Washington wildfire. They were actually targeted for immigration enforcement while they were on the job fighting a wildfire. So I did see somebody, I think, put it succinctly enough. I got to see if I can scroll back and find it and credit it to them. But here we are. It was Marissa Cabas, who's very widely circulated herself on social media, putting it this way. Imagine being so maniacally racist that you side with the fire over the firefighter. You're now objectively pro-fire, as they might have said during the Iraq War way back when. So, that's a new twist on things, arresting firefighters while they're working on it. Isabella Breda and Conrad Swanson are the authors of the piece in the Seattle Times, which has been, must have been reposted, who knows, thousands and thousands of times. The photo taken by the fire crew and granted to the Seattle Times by courtesy is the iconic picture in this case. Federal law enforcement agents, including with the U.S. Border Patrol, arrived at a site on Wednesday afternoon to demand identification from private contracting crews fighting the Bear Gulch fire near Lake Cushman. That's the caption on the photo taken by and provided by courtesy of the fire crew themselves. It's a disturbing story. People reading the details of it are shocked. We'll share that shock with you. 2 people fighting the Bear Gulch fire on the Olympic Peninsula were arrested by federal law enforcement Wednesday in a confrontation described by firefighters and depicted in photos and video. I haven't seen the video for it. Why the 2 firefighters were arrested is unclear. Can't even be sure of that at this point. But a spokesperson for the incident management team leading the firefighting response said the team was, quote, aware of a Border Patrol operation on the fire, that it was not interfering with the firefighting response. Yes, it is, but they had to say that publicly, and referred reporters to the Border Patrol station in Port Angeles. Over 3 hours, federal agents demanded identification from the members of 2 private contractor crews. So this isn't even like a 5-minute encounter. They're fighting a wildfire, and for 3 hours, these guys are persisting in the in their effort to ID everybody. Papers, please. I can't produce my papers. There's a wildfire. 1, I'm busy. 2, my papers might catch on fire. 3, I'm working here. Get out of here. Go find somebody else to harass. It's interesting, too. I was reading where were we? Were we in the caption or were we in the story proper when we were saying this? I don't know. It occurred to me that the way it was put made it sound like, hey, maybe Border Patrol guys are lighting fires to draw out fire crews that they can then arrest. Nobody makes that accusation. But it just occurred to me as not beyond the pale, because that's who we're dealing with. They're that crazy. Why the 2 firefighters were arrested is unclear. A spokesperson said that I guess they have to claim that it didn't affect their firefighting response in order to maintain their contracts. But over 3 hours, federal agents demanded identification from the members of 2 private contractor crews. The crews were among the 400 people, including firefighters, deployed to fight the wildfire, the largest active blaze in Washington state. Border Patrol, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the Department of Homeland Security No response to requests for comment. It is unusual for the federal border agents to make arrests during the fighting of an active fire, especially in a remote area. Yeah, I guess you could say that. I think legal will let you get away with that one. On Wednesday, the 2 contract fire crews were sent up to the northeast side of Lake Cushman to cut wood for the local community, according to 2 firefighters on one of the crews. I'm not really sure what that is about, but it sounds like the work was less about holding hoses and spraying water on a fire than about, I don't know, getting fuel for the spread of the fire out of the way and then donating it as firewood. I don't know. Is that what was going on? The firefighters requested anonymity because they feared retaliation from federal agencies for talking to the media, and they're quite right to believe so. While they were waiting for their division supervisor to arrive, federal law enforcement showed up about 9:30 a.m. Federal law enforcement asked the crews to line up to check their IDs, according to the firefighters. One of the firefighters said members of the crew were told not to take video of the incident, but, they did. You risk your life out here to save the community, the firefighter said, and this is how they treat us. In a FaceTime video call from the other firefighters to the Seattle Times, firefighters in their gear were seen sitting on logs in front of federal officers. That's the photo that got circulated along with the piece. Some firefighters were dismissed back to their vehicles. One firefighter attempted to walk over to his company vehicle to get something to drink. It's thirsty work fighting fires, and appeared to have been called back by federal officers. In image, don't even do that. No drinking for you. In images shared by firefighters from the scene, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection vehicle is parked nearby. Officers wearing police, and that's in scare quotes, and quite correct to do it that way, police vests are seen arresting a firefighter while another appears to be restrained. According to one of the firefighters, they were denied the chance to say goodbye to the detained crew members. I asked them if his family can say goodbye to him because they're family and they're just ripping him away, the firefighter told the Times, and this is what he said. And this is the part that struck everybody. You need to get the expletive out of here. That's it. Just says parentheses expletive. You can imagine which one it was. Greg would say it, but it doesn't say it in the text here. You need to get the expletive out of here. I'm going to make you leave. They're a little high on their own supply there. As of Wednesday morning, there were 6 20-person hand crews on the Bear Gulch fire, and 5 of those are private contractors. As of Wednesday morning, the fire covered nearly 9,000 acres and was only 13% contained. Federal policy under President Joe Biden's administration stated that without exigent circumstances, agents would not conduct their operations at natural disaster or emergency sites. Whether that policy remains in place, however, remains unclear, although I guess all the evidence is that it does not. Federal officials have pursued aggressive immigration enforcement actions under President Donald Trump's administration. That's it. That's the end of the article. But there's a world in that penultimate paragraph there. Federal policy under Biden was that without exigent circumstances, some sort of extraordinary weird emergency, or the possibility of the imminent escape of a very dangerous criminal for some reason, agents wouldn't be conducting any operations at natural disaster or emergency sites. So that's interesting, one, as a matter of policy. Then you have to ask the question, does that policy remain in place? It remains unclear. What does that mean? Like on the face of it, you would say, well, duh, obviously the policy does not remain in place because here are agents conducting operations at a natural disaster or an emergency site. On the other hand, this is the Trump administration we're talking about. It is very possible that that policy may remain in place and they are just breaking policy to do this, or it may be that the policy's been rescinded. Nobody knows because despite Trump's proclivity for showing things that he's signed, nobody has ever bothered to do the paperwork on this. And it's probably the case that Trump in the Trump brain, I'm sure he didn't know that there was such a policy. If he was informed that there was such a policy, he would say, well, the hell with that. We're reversing the policy. And then somebody would say, well, to reverse the policy, easy enough to do. We'll prepare you an executive order. You sign it. But I'm going to the golf course right now. Well, we'll get to it eventually. Well, okay. In the meantime, so in his mind, he nullified the policy, if he even heard about it. And it may be that he said, what? I never heard that there was such a policy. What a dumb policy. I don't recognize that policy. So, it may have been repealed. It may not have been repealed. He may just say, don't repeal it, just break it, just to prove that we can. There really are 15 different possibilities, and that's all you can report. Whether that policy remains in place is unclear. Certainly the practice of that policy does not remain in place, but we don't know whether they thought they repealed it, they did repeal it, or they don't care to repeal it. They just want to do the thing just to make people madder. They're going to do it in contravention of an existing policy. That's the gang we're talking about. All right. That should disturb you, obviously. And I hope it does. There's about 15 different other things that we could be going to on this, and I'm just not sure which one to do, but I guess as follow-up to that possibility that there are 10, 15 possible permutations for the reality behind the observation that it doesn't look like this policy is still in place. Let's talk about some of the other policies that may or may not be in place. One eye catcher this morning for me, frequently it is the case that if David Dayen has written it, my eye has been caught. The American Prospect publishes his piece today, Judge the Actually Existing Trump Economy, Not the Theory. I feel like it's operating in the same space of maybe this is policy, maybe it isn't, but also shifts the focus a little bit back to the economy. And I don't know, maybe it even helps us inform the background against which we might decide the question that Greg had, which is, I don't understand why the Supreme Court is doing the things that they're doing and how they can live with themselves, even on economic issues like the idea of trying to carve out an exception for Federal Reserve governors from at-will firing by the president. So we'll see. Equity stakes, loophole closures, and protecting domestic industries might make sense in someone else's hands, non-bruised hands, let's say, for instance, not from a president with no strategy or plan. And the piece is illustrated by Trump blankly staring, or trying to give his blue steel stare, I guess. But he's sort of kind of focusing maybe on people in the audience of him holding up another recently signed presidential document of some kind, whether or not it has any force of law, and showing it off. The caption says it's a signed executive order that he signed during an event to announce new tariffs in the Rose Garden, which is now no longer a Rose Garden, but back on April 2nd, 2025. Basically, they were just looking for a photo of him vapidly looking out at something, at an audience, gandering at something he signed that he didn't understand. This, too, is an ongoing issue that a lot of times the video that Aaron Rupar is able to capture from others and share with us makes plain that as he's signing these executive orders, he's got a staffer in there who's literally explaining what they are to him, and not so much as, well, this is the one that, the ones we discussed, there are 10 of them, and this is the one that does da-da-da, implying that we've talked about this before. Instead, this is very often implies that this is the first time he's seen such a thing. Well, and Trump will actually say, well, what's this one? This implements a new policy, da, 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 da. And then sometimes Trump asks questions about it, like, really, this is the first time that he's seen it. Not that he's cleverly employing a rhetorical device to explain to the audience. You and I will have a Socratic discussion about what this is for the edification of all of those listening. Literally, what is that? I don't know. I don't understand that. Well, okay, let's see what David Dayen has to say about the economic stuff. One of the biggest biases in American life, in general, is the idea that Republicans are, quote, good for business. I don't understand why people cling to it, but he's right. But if you are a business with any need to receive commercial parcels from other countries, for instance, like we told you yesterday, Republicans are pretty bad for you right now. Numerous industrialized countries throughout Europe and Asia have suspended business parcel shipments to the U.S. in advance of a Friday change to the so-called de minimis rules. In most countries, only letters and gift parcels under $100 are being let through, though postal services in Italy, it's in the mail. You remember them. Lithuania, I don't know. Eat mail. I don't know what this sort of vaguely Russian accent did. Bosnia-Herzegovina, oh God. Now, where's Transylvania? Blah, 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 blah. It's the mail. Thailand, oh, I'm not even going to try anymore. The Czech Republic as well, and others have suspended sending all packages to the U.S. regardless of value. Wow. Again, that's Italy, Lithuania, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Thailand, and Czech Republic are just like, forget it. We even de minimis under $100 and letters, we're just not, parcels anyway, we're just not doing it. E-commerce firms like Etsy and eBay have also suspended shipping of U.S.-bound parcels from some countries. Private shippers like FedEx could be used, though that will be much costlier. A little bit of a tariff all by itself. Before this year, any shipment valued under $800 was allowed to enter the country without duties or inspection. This created a surge of packages, primarily from China, getting around normal shipping processes, thus enabling Chinese e-commerce retailers like, is it Shine, S-H-E-I-N, and Temu, that one we know, to charge shockingly low prices for goods suspected of being made with slave labor, although I thought they were pro-slavery, and violating copyright as well, as Shine and Temu grew textile factories across the U.S. shut down and lawmakers searched for a solution. Back in May, the Trump administration ended the de minimis exemption for China and Hong Kong after an initial order was delayed for 3 months or 2 weeks, some very short period of time, because no structure for collecting that many tariffs and conducting that many inspections, millions per day, was laid out. Right. No approach to it. No actual rules for it. Just do it. Just say you did it. And even if we don't collect those tariffs, say we collected them as well. Why not? The administration appears to have done the exact same thing on packages from other countries, advancing the policy before devising the infrastructure. Parenthetically, he notes here, international posts can use the same system they use for packages over $800, but obviously they do not have faith in being able to do it at scale. International postal services are obligated under the Trump order to collect the duties and taxes, and they need systems in place to do that. There are third parties like Zonos, I'm not aware of them, but there's a link here, you can read about it, that are certified to collect on behalf of an international postal system, and that might be a workaround, but those relationships have to be established. There's an actual international system to smooth out these kinds of disputes called the Universal Postal Union, but good luck getting the Trump administration to submit to the dictates of an international consortium. I should say, David says, that this isn't that big a deal. As Lori Wallach of Rethink Trade pointed out over email, less than 10% of de minimis packages enter the country by post. And the eventual working out of the China ban on de minimis has led to a substantial drop in this kind of package volume. It's just one of life's little hassles and an unnecessary one. For small entrepreneurs, even short-term delays or cost spikes for shipping through more expensive services could be fatal to their business. You can make a case for stopping de minimis from countries that exploit the loophole. I have done so, and he links to it. You can make a good case for changing the exemption from $800, a level Congress only set in 2016, down to $100 even, and as the administration has effectively done. But you cannot make a case for doing any of this before setting up processes for how it will all work. Basically, this is just another form of the question, which usually, in the hands of Republicans, can stop just about anything, or at least stop the discussion of it short. How are you going to pay for it? They say, well, the new question is, how are you going to do it? You say you're going to collect taxes. Well, I'm just going to order them. All right. Who's going to collect the money and count it and tell you how much there is and put it in a bank account or whatever the hell you're planning on doing with it? How is it going to work? Who's allowed to do that? Who's in charge of collecting it? Anyway, back to the story. That's ultimately the problem with Trump's version of state-run capitalism. Even if you agree with the idea behind individual actions, it's all being done in such a short-sighted way, or for the purposes of punishing enemies and rewarding friends, that there's no way to disaggregate the salutary policy in theory with the cock-up in practice. And sometimes it's really old. I should point out, it's probably very often only done for show, too, right? If you say that there's going to be a very heavy tariff on XYZ sector, maybe accompanied with, but there's an exemption for the operations of this company or that particular product or things involved in the manufacture of that product, then you get the stock market manipulation that you're looking for, and the right stocks go up and the wrong stocks go down, and the fact that it never happens because there's no infrastructure for doing it hardly matters for day traders. What matters is the news that it's the intention of the United States government to meddle in that market such that this will be the outcome. Let's bet on stocks based on that. The fact that 2 weeks later, none of it has ever happened. I mean, if you know that that's going to be the case, I guess you can play the market that way as well, but it's not necessary. You were meant to cash in a matter of hours or days in between the announcement. Well, you were meant to cash in just prior to the announcement. Wink, wink, this might happen. We'll let you know at 2 p.m. Everybody goes, does the right purchasing. The announcement is made. The stock market's been manipulated. Sell it off. And by the time everybody realizes we're not really doing that thing, we've made our money and left. All right, back to David's description of what's going on. Take the Trump administration's acquisition of a 10% stake in Intel, please, which no less than Bernie Sanders has endorsed. Got it? If microchip, is this Sanders? Oh, yeah. Okay. We can do Sanders' voice. If microchip companies, I got to get back to his voice. How does he? It's a disaster. That's the guy. That's the key word. If microchip companies make a profit from the generous grants they receive from the federal government, I think that's what it is, federal, the taxpayers of America have a right to a reasonable return on that investment, Sanders said in consistent stance for him dating back to the debate over the CHIPS Act. But the Trump administration isn't giving Intel a generous grant. That money was already out the door before Trump took office. Trump claimed that Intel's CEO was a Chinese operative and demanded that he resign, following which, or in mitigation for which, he grabbed the 10% stake. The implication is clear. Trump wanted a payoff. Protection money, really, or he would hurt the company. That is far different than seeking equity in exchange for federal support, or federal support. Intel must now issue more stock to accommodate the giveaway, which will make it marginally more difficult to raise new capital. Meanwhile, the Fed's new stake gets the company no support to make higher-end chips or acquire more customers, nor are there any governance changes on the horizon to fix a company that has been far more concerned with its own stock price than engineering feats. Intel has maxed out shareholder payouts over the past 2 decades and has so little to offer that it had to suspend dividends a year ago. So Trump bought into a dying company with structural deficiencies. He's a genius investor, right? Maybe in some way the stake ensures that Intel's foundries will stay in business, but that's just treading water. The whole problem with the industry is that the playing field for a domestic chip manufacturer relative to overseas competitors and fabless chip designers, fabless? I don't know. That's what it says, is woefully uneven. And Trump is actually exacerbating this disparity through his other deals. Deals. He loves the deals. Trump allowed NVIDIA to sell chip designs to China for a dubious 15% export fee. Dubious both in its effects and, I guess, probably whether or not it's really being collected, I would add. And waived in Apple's overseas chips after getting a gold and glass statue from its CEO. These deals directly undermine the company whose stock Trump just seized. And the sunk cost of buying the stake will only heighten this contradictory position. There are other examples of Trump taking a minority stake that has jump-started the business, as with rare earth producer MP Materials, which now has a $500 million contract with Apple. But Intel's problems go far deeper than a nascent rare earth company, and major investors like Trump are likely to gauge the stock price instead of performance as a metric of success, pushing for a return in exactly the ways that got Intel into trouble in the first place. In some primitive sense, it might be good to get equity stakes in exchange for government support. In reality, a far more coordinated effort would be needed to actually preserve that investment and Intel's place in the semiconductor industry, much less enhance them. There's more to market crafting than taking on stock, especially stock in a failing company. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Alrighty, welcome back everybody to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let me continue with reading from David Dayen's piece in the American Prospect about Trump's so-called economic policy and what is and isn't actually coordinated about it, if anything, and his admonition here to judge the results rather than what is claimed to be the policy, because the policy claims change every 15 minutes anyway. What's actually happening out there. So as we left off, we pointed out he was saying in some primitive sense, it might be good to get equity stakes in exchange for government support, though that's not what happened, strictly speaking, with Intel. In reality, a far more coordinated effort would be needed to actually preserve that investment and Intel's place in the semiconductor industry, much less enhance them. There's more to market crafting than taking on stock, especially stock in a failing company, but that's the primary way Trump conceives of it. That's the bit we didn't get out before the break. And it's the same across the board. Equity interest in defense manufacturers, that now being floated by, I saw Howard Lutnick on TV saying, yeah, maybe we ought to take a piece of, or I don't know, maybe all of Lockheed Martin, since they basically make all their profits through government contracting anyway, which is an odd way of, advocating for free markets or whatever. But where's Jeff Bezos and all this? Equity interest in defense manufacturers like Lockheed Martin that are already effectively wards of the state may sound appealing. But do we really want to take the notional influence Lockheed has on U.S. foreign policy and make it more institutionally cemented with an equity stake? Should what's good for Lockheed literally be what's good for the country? There are times when tariffs also can be employed to good ends to boost domestic manufacturing. Blanket tariffs on all goods, including ones that can't be produced in the United States, and on components for domestic manufacturing are just stupid, as is the whipsawing of tariffs from one level to another so nobody can plan or invest. And predictably, U.S. manufacturing output is collapsing outside of data centers. New orders are down, stagflation with higher inflation and higher unemployment is starting to bite, and recession specials are popping up around the country. You can sit around and debate theories about state capitalism and optimal concepts for government's relationship to business. I first heard about government equity stakes as a more efficient means for corporate taxation from Dean Baker years ago. And yeah, that's a notion that, we've been discussing it in those terms too in the last couple of days. Like, isn't there some other way that we could be taking a portion of a corporation's proceeds on a regular basis and transferring it into the Treasury than grabbing their stock and then holding onto this illiquid asset versus just give us cash and put it directly into the Treasury? But okay, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, if we take an asset that entitles us to convert to cash at some later date, maybe that's a workable thing. But what's the rest of the plan? How is it going to work? Well, I guess Dean Baker had some ideas about it years ago and told David about them. And if you subscribe to the theory that taxation is a public seizure of private resources, then an equity stake is no different than a corporate tax. And by the same token, regulation is no different than corporate governance. And you can say that the last interventionist effort in the economy by Joe Biden was too reliant on corporate whims and should have leaned on more public ownership of infrastructure in industries like energy. I'm here to say, David concludes, that none of this theorizing matters right now relative to the specific circumstances. We don't have a fantasy world industrial policy, but the actually existing position of Donald Trump dictating the economy from on high, devoid of any strategy outside of the 2 inches between Trump's face and whatever CEO is sitting in the Oval Office. It's frequently slapdash and contradictory, and it is on a trajectory to make the entire country poorer. Just because it occasionally rhymes with decent policy doesn't make it supportable. Good point. Well taken. Something to keep in mind. Helps us inform our discussion of everything that's coming down the pipe, I guess. Coming down the pike now and in the future. Just remember that it's a little too easy to whitewash in the mainstream media. Well, experts say this could be, somehow related to something that might make political or policy sense at some point. Plus, it's so crazy it just might work. And who cares because it's working in the polls, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, a good reminder, there's no planning, there's no doctrine to which they are clinging except the doctrine of make Trump make news. And if you can also steal some money along the way, yeah, that's of some interest as well. It probably was primarily stealing the money at one point and then make news with it as well. But I don't know. It seems to flip-flop in between two, and they're related. And of course, his staying in the news helps him overvalue the assets he already has. So it's a business move as well. All right. Let's see other things that are in Instapaper and of some value in sharing. I can't seem to refresh Instapaper as easily as I think should be the case. But yeah, there's a couple of other items that I added during the break that I had to close Instapaper and reopen it in order to get it to refresh and display the things. All right, let's see. Couple other things that I thought might be worth reading. And I guess this is just something that I picked up off of also the American Prospect because I was in the middle of reading one of their pieces. It's not David Dayen, but I thought this might be interesting to read in light of the information we got yesterday about I guess essentially the hacking of the entire Social Security Administration database and the uploading of that database to an unsecure cloud server and at the hands of people who came to grab up that data by virtue of their hiring into the dodgy crew straight out of Hackerland and coming to the job at 19 years of age with no particular concerns about what it might mean to lose control of your identity your digital identity, and your credit ratings because I'm 19, I don't have that stuff, and LOL, it's fun to trade in that stuff because it's a victimless crime. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not the victim of the crime, and I don't know anybody who is, even though the whole point is, yeah, you need to select some victims and steal their identities and use them to buy cool stuff and pay for things that I don't have the money for. So yeah, people moving in and out of the world of hackers, like actual online wackadoodle hackers who don't care about anybody, and instead being entrusted with the Social Security database. Here, just do this. Okay, well, we probably want to revisit that and read a little bit more about, and we never did, I don't think we finished that article, but I want to say that in light of the fact that all of that information has now been put in jeopardy, you might think, you were probably thinking along these lines anyway with this article, but in case you didn't connect the two, you probably should. And of course, it has to do with RFK Jr., who was already in the news as well. So weaving together a couple, we're doing the weave with a couple of different themes here. RFK Jr., it says here in this piece by Charlie McGill at the American Prospect, RFK Jr. wants a wearable technology, smart technology, on every American body, including dead bears, I guess, probably. Despite his past criticism of the data privacy risks associated with smart technology, Kennedy's HHS is now pushing wearables on Americans. Experts say the privacy concerns are jarring. Also, by the way, no consistency to the health policy at HHS under Kennedy either. Almost all the people who are fueling his anti-vax stances and other anti-science weirdness will probably also tell you in their personal philosophies that the idea of wearable technology is problematic for them too. They don't like the idea of wirelessly connecting to anything at all with a device that beams its signals through your body, essentially, or exposes you to those signals. Remember, these are the people who think that 5G internet Wi-Fi type services is what's causing COVID or turning you magnetic or God only knows what else. So the idea of a wearable on everybody you would think would be inconsistent with their positions. But F all of that, because we're just going to do whatever the hell occurs to me. And today I'm going to wear an Edgar suit and also become HHS secretary. I saw Ian Boudreaux the other day putting it pretty well. Like, why are we taking the health policy advice from the guy who sounds like a dying refrigerator compressor? It's not what a dying compressor sounds like, but you get the idea. It was well put. So what's going on here? Golly, let's go find out. Between his defunding of mRNA research, firing the CDC's entire 17-member vaccine advisory panel, and a crusade against fluoride in drinking water, and of course now the CDC massacre Greg was telling us about, and the shooting, which was an attempted actual massacre, not just a metaphorical one of resignations and firings, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Maha agenda has followed a fairly predictable path, interestingly enough, given his longstanding advocacy of crank health remedies and vaccine science denialism. But in the last few months, one RFK policy has come out of left field. His embrace of wearable health technology as a key part of the Maha agenda. In the past, Kennedy was a harsh critic of the privacy problems with wearable technology, let alone the 5G signal type thing. But now he's a committed enthusiast. Curious. Yeah, he's got enthusiasm for it. Advanced surveillance devices attached to your body are rather at odds with the traditional woo-woo fashion for natural treatments and food, but in a way it makes sense. Wearables, a broad category that spans smartwatches and fitness trackers to glucose monitors and therapeutic devices, have exploded in popularity in the last couple of years as consumer preferences have shifted in a health-conscious direction and rates of chronic disease continue to rise. By promising to put more data in the hands of users and allow individuals to take a preventative approach to healthcare and wellness, the philosophy behind wearables often echoes the rhetoric of the Maha movement. In testimony to the House Energy Committee on June 24th, this connection was made explicit by Kennedy himself. Asked about Americans' access to wearables, what kind of question is that? RFK praised the technology as a way people can take control of their own health, and announced one of the biggest advertising campaigns in HHS history to encourage their use. The goal, RFK testified, was to have every American using the technology in the next 4 years. Why that unit of time? Gee whiz, I don't know. This full-throated and very throaty endorsement by the HHS secretary was the latest win in a meteoric rise, for the wearables industry, a $53 billion market whose size is projected to triple in the next decade. I guess go buy stock. While wearables started with things like tracking heart rates or steps, says Al, not AI, but Al Noshirvani, okay? That's my guess. The vice chair of the Health and Fitness Association's board of directors. It's now moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. There's a lot of new and innovative technologies that are coming out. Medical researchers believe that these technologies could have substantial health benefits. One study on the impact of wearables in health research found that the device may transform the understanding of population health dynamics and the ability to forecast health trends. All possibly true. While a review of wearable device use in chronic disease management found that they offer transformative potential for managing chronic illnesses by enhancing real-time monitoring and patient engagement. Yes, that's all the upside to it, sure. But as these products become more medically useful, the amount of data they collect necessarily grows. Thorin Klosowski, not the dwarf chieftain from the Lord of the Rings novels, but the other Thorin in your life, Thorin Klosowski, a security and privacy advocate and activist at, well, it doesn't say and, it's just activist. I screwed it up. I'm not Donald Trump, you know. But he's with the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and he told the Prospect that general purpose wearables, quote, tend to collect a variety of health data, including heart rate and rhythm, blood oxygen level, menstrual health, sleep patterns, and watch out for the menstrual health one, because apparently they've been using that information to see whether or not to monitor your status. Did you leave the state the other day to get an abortion, even though they're banned in this state? We checked that. You know about that. You've heard about that. If you haven't, look into it. Anyway, but yes, they collect a variety of data. We left off after that one. Sleep patterns and general movement info. Other more medically oriented devices collect additional data, such as blood glucose levels. Needless to say, this data can be highly sensitive. Experts stress that there are significant data privacy concerns associated with the collection and storage of this personal information. In the United States, there's not a comprehensive federal law regulating data privacy whatsoever. Alicia Jessup, an associate professor at Pepperdine University and an attorney in sports law, told the Prospect. While many consumers assume that HIPAA protects their medical information, that landmark privacy law only covers the relationship between the doctor and the patient, meaning that the data collected by wearables exists outside of HIPAA's umbrella. Important to note. Jessup says that as the wearables industry has grown, their use of data has become more widespread. Today, wearable companies sometimes share data with third parties, such as businesses, researchers, or consultants, through contractual agreements that users might not even realize exist. There's sometimes in those disclosures that you have to check the box and say you read when you didn't really read them. If the data stays in-house, wearables firms may evaluate and mine the data for advertising purposes or to train AI models. These concerns are not merely theoretical. Just a few weeks ago, the wearables firm Whoop, W-H-O-O-P, Whoop, was accused of disclosing to a third party the sensitive personal data of its fitness tracker and app users in violation of its privacy policy and California law. So sometimes even if you do read the thing, and you get a proper understanding of it, and you sign it and agree to it, they may say, to hell with it. We'll violate it. And who'll know? Because nobody reads these things, like the mortgage applications Pulte once handled. The Whoop lawsuit shows how, in the absence of federal regulation to protect users' data privacy, states and localities have tried to fill the gap. 20 U.S. states have enacted comprehensive data privacy law, California's Consumer Privacy Act being the strongest in the country. Fitting for Silicon Valley, I think, while a number of states and localities have enacted biometric privacy laws as well. Jessup says that those laws require companies to obtain consumers' informed consent, that's quote-unquote informed consent, about what data they are gathering, how that data is stored, how it's used. But consumers often authorize the internal use or external sale of that data, and privacy policies they mindlessly skip through. Can't blame you for that one. For users not located in one of those states, Klosowski, the security and privacy activist, Thorin, simply said that their data privacy environment is not super regulated. Once upon a time, appropriate for Thorin, once upon a time, these data privacy concerns were front of mind for Kennedy. On a 2020 episode of his podcast, Truth, produced by the anti-vaccine Children's Health Defense, RFK told listeners that anything you can call smart, or anything that you call smart, including your Apple Watch, are about two things: surveillance and harvesting data. Comparing this free data to the oil and gold rushes of days past, the current HHS secretary warned his audience, at that time anyway, against plots meant to, quote, turn you into a permanent consumer through the analysis and monetization of billions of terabytes of data. But today, RFK is telling a very different story about wearables and data privacy. On July 30th, Kennedy's HHS held a Make Health Tech Great Again. They're just putting that on everything. It's like the gate suffix. A Make Health Tech Great Again event where he announced the CMS Health Technology Ecosystem Initiative, a voluntary program of data exchange among over 60 health and technology companies. If Americans opt into this program, their health data will enter a data sharing network accessible by all participating companies, with the goal of increasing individuals' access to their medical records and allowing them to take a more personalized approach to their health care. Wearables and the wellness apps they pair with appear central to this program. Not only are wearable firms like Oura, O-U-R-A, listed as participating firms, but HHS's introductory video for the program shows what appears to be an AI-generated video, great, of a woman scanning her smartwatch and uploading the data into the health app. For Jessup, this program exhibits huge red flags. As it stands, she told the Prospect, there's no federal law that is going to protect against these companies weaponizing this data against the American public. In practice, this could look like insurance companies joining the initiative and using the data to kick people off their insurance or raise premiums, or tech companies using the data to train AI systems or fine-tune their advertising algorithms. And the data privacy concerns with the CMS Health Technology Ecosystem Initiative are not just limited to private corporations. Noshirvani says that there's lots of worry about data sharing, not just with a third-party app, but with the government. In light of the Trump administration's use of confidential government data to bring trumped-up charges of mortgage fraud against Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, right on the page with me here, and Senator Adam Schiff, and New York Attorney General Letitia James, Americans have reasons to be concerned. So, here's where RFK's supposedly radical critique of American nutrition and healthcare has landed. A big corporate-backed sales pitch supposedly meant to empower Americans to improve their health individually, but practically designed to give big tech and AI companies more consumer data with no regulatory constraints. It's like Reaganism in a hemp tunic. Haha. The whole piece was written just to deliver that line at the end. But in addition to the craziness of the weaponization of data like Bill Pulte is doing, we add now to it the entire Social Security Administration database. So all your personal identifying health information may likewise be uploaded somewhere. or worse, collected by the government from many other somewheres and consolidated in a way that allows them to track your movements individually and bring down the power of the government against you if they don't like where you're going, or for that matter, what you're eating, or anything like it. Not to mention the side hustles of training AI with it and fine-tuning advertising algorithms. It's no controls whatsoever on where that data is going. But for some reason, RFK, now that he's in charge of the government, says, actually, well, the government should have all of your information. Used to think that they should have none of it, but now he realizes, one, he's in control of the government, and two, he can use that to personally enrich himself as well by grabbing 10% stakes in the various companies that do that stuff and maybe giving it to the Treasury and maybe not. I don't know. Just seems a little weird for this big reversal. Okay, so that's a new area in which you're going to have to keep an eye out for yourself. Let's see, other items that we might be able to add to the mix here before we exit for the day. I wonder whether, did I keep the piece open where we were talking about, I don't know, I had something that we read about half of the other day, and now I can't remember exactly what it was, but we have only minutes to spare before wrapping up for the day, and I'm just sort of scrolling for, there's a couple of long reads that I definitely wanted to share with you at some point, but all right, well, we'll have to keep it to the short ones and no more than that. Let's see. Well, that's just not that important. I want to, what I was reminded of, I guess because of the Kennedy mention, Trump's efforts to subtly rebrand. And I thought rebranding was bad. We learned that from Cracker Barrel just the other day, right? But rebrand the Kennedy Center, of which he made himself chairman, as the Trump Kennedy Center. Have we made mention of this? Anybody? He keeps subtly saying things like about it. And we're going to be doing this at the Kennedy Center. Some people call it the Trump Kennedy Center. I don't, and it's not me. I would never be so vain. But some people do call it that. And what can I tell you? A lot of people are saying it now. And it might have to stick. All right. Well, let's wrap things up, and maybe we'll read this bit here from The Guardian. We'll throw this in there since we were talking about economic policies and tariffs and the like, and the haphazard nature of all of this. I happen to have this piece from Mark Sweeney from The Guardian on Trump's tariffs. Trump threatens tariffs on countries that, quote, discriminate against U.S. tech. This crap that we're going to force everybody to be wearing, I guess, here in the United States. We need to be able to do it around the country and around the world. Levies and restrictions could hit the UK's digital services tax and EU states such as France, Italy, and Spain. And we got a lot of problems coming down the pike for these guys. Donald Trump has threatened to impose yet more tariffs and export restrictions on countries whose taxes, legislation, and regulation target U.S. big tech companies such as Google, Meta, Amazon, and Apple. And I guess the thing to look out for here is the wearable stuff as well. If there are states that have measures in place to protect your personal data, you can be sure that there are member states of the European Union that have that. We know that's the case. And it may be blocking the sales and reach of the data manipulation involved, attached to these sales in these other countries. Trump wants that out of the way, and he's going to threaten them with tariffs to make them do it. In a post to his social media platform, Truth Social, the president said, digital taxes, legislation, rules, or regulations are all designed to harm or discriminate against American technology. He said such measures, which include the UK's digital services tax, which raises about £800 million annually from global tech companies through a 2% levy on revenues, also outrageously give a complete pass to China's largest tech companies. Trump said, as President of the United States, I will stand up to countries that attack our incredible American tech companies. Unless these discriminatory actions are removed, I, as President of the United States, will impose substantial additional tariffs on that country's exports to the USA and institute export restrictions on our highly protected technologies and chips. The threat puts pressure on the UK and EU, which both struck recent trade agreements with the US. The EU has in place regulations to limit the power of big tech companies through the Digital Services Act, and several member states, including France, Italy, and Spain, have digital services taxes in place. U.S. officials have criticized the UK's digital services tax, which was introduced in 2020 and was kept in place after the trade deal with the Trump administration was reached in May. Of course, they have to have their own parallel exactly mirroring pretty much what's happening in the EU because, of course, they Brexited from the EU and can't benefit from the work that was already done. They have to reinvent that particular wheel. Trump has complained about the impact of DSTs around the world and the effect they're having on U.S. companies. In February, he issued an executive order titled Defending American Companies and Innovators from Overseas Extortion and Unfair Fines and Penalties. That was the title. Threatening tariffs in retaliation. Of course, in April it emerged that Keir Starmer had offered the big U.S. tech companies a reduction in the headline rate of the DST to placate Trump, while at the same time applying the levy to companies from other countries. Trump said on Monday, America and American technology companies are neither the piggy bank nor the doormat of the world any longer. Show respect to America and our amazing tech companies, or consider the consequences. The warning comes a week after the U.S. and EU agreed in a joint statement that they would together address unjustified trade barriers. However, the EU said separately that it had not committed to altering any of its digital regulations. In June, Canada scrapped its digital services tax, which Trump had described as a direct and blatant attack in an effort to smooth trade negotiations with its neighbors. Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats, said the UK government should not kowtow to Trump's bullying tactics. Oh well, I think they probably will anyway.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, now it's your turn to listen to Justice Putnam on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, which follows us next right here on Netroots Radio. What's at the top of his list? Jack Smith. Remember him? Jack Smith and his lawyers are coming out swinging as he shoves back against MAGA's imaginary and unfounded phony whistleblower complaint against him. Stay tuned.